Okay, everyone, so today's lesson is going to be Social Policy Part 2, which is all about the theories. In this lesson, what we're going to do is apply all of our knowledge of the social policies that we learned last lesson to what the theories say. The idea for each of these policies is that, first of all, you can say what their view of social policy is. Is it going to be positive or is it going to be negative? And then you need to be able to explain that connection. So what do these theories think about policy generally? The second thing you then need to be able to do is to provide an example of a social policy that supports your idea. And then finally, you then need to be able to link it to a theorist. Now, I've already done that for you. You just need to figure out what the connection is. All right? So let's have a look at this and we'll see how it goes from there. So on the board, we've got 6 different theoretical perspectives on what they will think about social policy. We've got to figure out whether that's a positive or a negative, explain what it is, link it to a social policy, and then link it to a theorist. So in class, we've had a few minutes just to figure this out. So now we're going to come back from that activity. So here we go, everybody. Let's begin with functionalism, and we'll go in a logical order. We'll do the top row first, and then the bottom row second. All right? We'll start with a simple tick and cross idea, whether like it or not, then explain it, and then link it to a social policy, and then finally link it to a theorist. So, Neve, can you tell me about functionalism, please?
Well, we like social policies because anything that exists is to benefit society.
Brilliant. So, we're going to put a tick next to their name to keep it nice and simple. So, functionalists like social policy because, like Neve's just said, if something exists, it must be functional. So, social policy is functional. It therefore benefits society. Can you keep going on that? Yeah, go for it.
Social policy is the medicine of society.
Cool.
And it helps society evolve, like structural differentiation.
Brilliant. So social policy is like the medicine of society. If you remember, Durkheim was the guy who talked about how society was like a biological organism, like a human body. And the idea is he uses the analogy of saying, well, if something's wrong with the human body, you give it medicine and that fixes the problem. Social policy is like the medicine of society. If something's broken, the government will pass a thing of social policy to improve society. And like Neve just said, what that's all about is the idea of evolution. So that society will always progress and always be functional. If something loses its functions, it gets replaced by something better, which, as she said, was all about structural differentiation. Now, the great thing about this is you can use any policy at all to evidence that. Okay, so that's the structural differentiation. Sorry about that. So we'll put that in the gap up there. Can anybody identify from our discussions earlier on a policy that we could use to evidence functionalism?
Contraceptive pill.
Yeah, that'll do. All right. So you could use the contraceptive pill. Any policy at all. Because it's a positive thing for society. It wouldn't have been introduced if it wasn't positive. You could therefore argue what it means is that families could then choose when they're going to have children, and that could make things a bit more better for them, and it could be at the right time, etc., making things more effective, which links perfectly well to the next one down here. All right. All we need to do then is apply what Fletcher said to all of this view of social policy. Paige, can you help me out with that? Yeah, because what you're saying is the role of social policy is to provide other institutions with plenty of power and things like that. And basically, all social policy will make the family more effective than it ever has been before. Make family more effective. You can use any social policy to evidence that. Because what it does is the idea is if it makes it more effective, the whole point of the state is just trying to make things easier for the family. And they'll usually do that by boosting the other institutions or by making things easier for the family. Now, we've used the contraceptive pill. You can use any other policy to do that. My connection, if I was writing this essay, would just be that by introducing the contraceptive pill, it makes it easier for families to plan when they're going to have their children, when they're ready to do so, and they feel as though the right stage of their lives to do so. Therefore, by passing the contraceptive pill, the state have helped the family become more effective at doing its primary functions of primary socialisation and stuff like that. That'd be a really nice connection. Let's move on to something else. So I'll do, the next one is the new right. So first of all, we've got to figure out whether they're going to think this is a positive or a negative thing. So Venancio, what do you think? Is it going to be a positive or a negative view of social policy?
We're not going to like it.
Correct. Why not?
Because we're conservative and want everything to be kept traditional. But policies are changing everything.
That's right. And what are their general view of state intervention generally?
It shouldn't really happen. The family should be a private institution.
Brilliant answer. So they're against state intervention generally. They don't think that the state should get involved in everyday life. They also think, like Venancio said, that the family is a private institution. It should be left alone by the government, and the government really has no place in the family and telling the family what to do. If you remember, like Venancio said, they have a very traditional view of the family. So they love the nuclear family, NF, all right? They love the nuclear family. But everybody, what's happened to the nuclear family?
It's like going on decline. There's a moral decline.
Good, yeah. There's a moral decline, which has led to family diversity and things, which has led to nuclear family being in decline, and they're not happy about it. And it's all because of the state. Now for you, when you're writing this essay, there's going to be a lot of choice in this. That's what application's all about. It's how you interpret the information and how you apply that knowledge. It helps if you remember the 5 reasons for the moral decline according to the new right. All right? So if I start you off with impact of feminism, what comes next? Go on.
I'll go to divorce.
Well, we'll do divorce. We'll have to do it in order.
Sexual freedom.
Sexual freedom, 3.
Family diversity.
Family benefit, 4.
Children have no discipline.
5. All right, so for the recording, I'll just repeat that. Impact of feminism, sexual freedom, children have no discipline, family diversity, and have I missed divorce off? Yeah, divorce. They're my 5. And basically, you need to pick any of those that you think you can link to a theorist and a policy. So for easiness, what about divorce? They don't like divorce because it breaks up the nuclear family. It's an evidence of moral decline. I'm going to go for the Divorce Reform Act. So we've explained whether like policy or not. So we've identified whether like policy or not. We've explained it. We've linked it to a policy. Now I just need to link it to a theorist. I've picked Charles Murray because he's the most commonly known new right theorist out there. Now, me and Foray were talking about Charles Murray. Can you remember his theory, Foray?
The underclass.
Yes. So what we need to do is figure out how that connects to the Divorce Reform Act, because it does. Keep going, Foray. What is the underclass, please?
They're a class lower than the working class in society because they don't really work. They rely on benefits, so on the state.
And what family structure do they tend to be in?
Is it single parent families?
Correct. Well done. And everybody, what's the biggest cause of single parenthood in the UK? Divorce. And that's the connection. So this is how it works. The new right have a negative view of social policy because they are generally against state intervention altogether. They think the family is a private institution. And because of state involvement in the family over the years, the nuclear family has now led to a decline because of a moral decline in society. It's been replaced by all different types of family structures because of things like divorce. The Divorce Reform Act allowed this to happen through making divorce a lot simpler, because instead of having to prove a marital crime had taken place, instead it could now be done under a breakdown of marriage, which has made divorce much easier to access. Charles Murray would say this has been a symptom of or has caused the underclass. Loads of immoral family structures living off the state, and as a result are ruining society. Nice paragraph there, all from the information in that box. I hope that makes sense. Please ask if not. Okay. Next one along is Don's a lot. So in the back row, we were talking about this earlier on. So Lauren, do you want to help me out with this? What do you think? Positive or negative? Yeah, so let's talk about it. So I'll just do this up in here. Do you remember what he was just generally talking about?
How people regulate behaviour.
Cool. So whose theory was he using?
Foucault.
Yeah, Foucault. Yeah, Foucault. So he applies Foucault's work. He applies Foucault to the family. How the threat of surveillance regulates people's behaviour. I'll just write threat of surveillance because I'll run out of room otherwise. What's he talking about? The family of regulated behaviour, but who's that linked to? What's he, all of his study is all about? Particular members of the family. Not parents, but go on, keep going. Children. It's all about children.
Is that like every child matters policy?
Brilliant. So it's all about child protection, really. That's what the whole study is about. And how the family will now police its own behaviour. I suppose another way of linking it, you could link it to domestic abuse as well, because let's say men would know that if, I don't know, that people would be more likely to report it these days and things, so you could link it to that. But I think child protection is the easiest link, because then you could link it to some policies. The easiest one is the Children's Act, the Every Child Matters policy. Or you could use smacking laws, or you could use both, because they're kind of connected together. All right, sorry, run out of space there. Smacking laws. To evidence that if you do leave a mark, people are going to see it. If you hit your kid and leave a mark, people are going to see it. They go to school the next day, they've got a black eye, the teacher's going to start asking questions, all right? And therefore, the family will regulate its behaviour knowing that they'll be under the threat of surveillance. Just before I carry on, are you all understanding what we're doing here? Yeah? Yeah, good. All right, good. So let's keep going. Now, I've not taught you Eileen Drew yet, but I thought it'd be a really good opportunity because she talks about social policy directly, which is why I'm bringing her into today's lesson. She's going to be our liberal feminist connection. So let's talk about it generally, all right? So, Jade, could you help me with this one? What do you think they say about social policy?
They say that it's a barrier, but that we're overcoming it, so I like it.
Yeah, good. It's a really interesting twist, isn't it? That they say social policy can be a really positive thing, but that's very liberal feminists because they're very positive generally, because what they want is equality. Although social policy is a barrier to equality, we are overcoming that barrier. And therefore, we need to celebrate the progression that women have made in society towards that goal. If you want an easy option, you can link it to Sue Sharp and talk about how, because it's clear that we've had social policies that have helped women, we've now seen the progression in female expectations, or even Helen Wilkinson for a gender quiz, something like that. Any policy that gives women any form of freedom or choice or development could be relevant here. We've already used the contraceptive pill, so let's stay away from contraception. Is there anything else on there that you could potentially link to female progression? Yes, Paige. I think that's a really wise choice, and there's another reason just generally why that would be a really wise choice. We're going to put that down there now. So equal pay. I think it's a really wise choice because symbolically, and it is celebrated, believe it or not, it's still celebrated by liberal feminists because it was a symbolic policy that encouraged women to go to work. But why it's really good is it could also be seen as a barrier still that we're overcoming. Because what was the problem with the policy that most people are aware of?
Not mandatory.
It's not mandatory, it was a request, all right? So companies still don't have to give equal pay to their workers, but a lot of people aren't aware of that. They think that they'll go to work and get equal pay. So in actual fact, although it's a sign of a progression, it's still a barrier to equality. That'd be a brilliant connection to make. Now, again, you could use any of those other theories that I've taught you before, but I thought I'd just give you something new. The new one is a lady called Eileen Drew. There's a reason why I'm giving you this, and you'll see why in a minute. It would make you look really good in the exam, because it's got some nice concepts in there. We'll keep it nice and simple, though. Eileen Drew says there's two types of government that she's aware of. And that's, again, illustrating their structural approach. That's a very generalised thing to say. In the whole world, as far as she's aware, there are two types of government out there, which, again, suggests that that's quite a generalised claim. So there's two types of government. We'll just do it. 1, 2. All right? Keep it nice and simple. They sound really complicated, these, but they are, I promise you, dead easy. The first one is a familiaristic gender regime, which, again, sounds right posh, but it's dead easy. A type of government that is a familiaristic gender regime is a type of government that promotes traditional family values. They will try to encourage their population to embrace tradition and to stick to the old ways of life. They might make it more profitable for women to stay at home through tax breaks, but also for longer maternity leaves, things like that, to try and keep families at home. She gives the example of restricting welfare as part of that. If you restrict welfare payments for people, what that does is it encourages them to be in a family unit, because they don't want to break away from a family unit if they've got no safety net. She uses examples of really traditional countries like Greece to illustrate that, which in her opinion are have a very stingy welfare state, and they're very traditional in terms of their family values, and therefore trying to promote the old types of families. The way I always remember that is it's familiaristic. It looks a bit like family in there, the word family in there, so traditional family, but it's familiar to them because it's traditional. See what I mean? Whereas the other one's even easier. The opposite one is individualistic gender regimes. An individualistic gender regime is the complete opposite. So basically, it's just one that promotes individualism and choice and diversity. Put choice and diversity. So you're not using the same word in the concept. Diversity. Sorry, that's one word there. So it's an up-to-date government trying to encourage people to live the life they want to live, giving equal rights to men and women and gay rights and all that sort of stuff. She again focuses on welfare. They might have a very generous welfare system. Generous, I think that's how you spell it, that might be wrong. Welfare system. Alright, then they might have a very generous welfare system, because then they can promote people to live the lives that they want to live. She actually gives the example of Sweden. She believes that Sweden is one of the biggest individualistic gender regimes out there, because it tries to give people the opportunity to live the life they want to live. Alright? I think that would be a really cool thing to write in a social policy essay. I've nicked that from second year, alright? So try and use it if you can. So instead of just using Sue Sharp all the time, it just gives you a bit of variety and it looks really good. Let's do the last ones. There's nothing new with the last ones. We know them already, okay? So we've already identified 3 that are positive and 1 that's negative. We've still got another 1 that's positive and 1 that's negative left. All we've got to do now is guess which one is which. So, Chloe, can you tell me what you think radical feminists are going to say about social policy? Yes or no? They don't like it. No. All right. And that's what we need to build on now. So Chloe is right. Radical feminists are not going to have a good view of social policy, because the way they think of the state, who passed the social policy, they're just patriarchal. So stick with me, Chloe. What does patriarchal or patriarchy mean?
About your country.
I think you're thinking of patriotism. What does patriarchy mean?
I don't know.
Ah, that's all right. Don't worry. Go on, Millie.
Male-dominated society.
That's right. And if therefore the state is patriarchal, it's male-dominated. Think about it, everyone. How many female prime ministers have we had?
1.
And was she all for female rights and things like that? No. So women have never really had a lot of representation when it comes to making decisions from a radical feminist point of view. If you ever think about it, their future plan doesn't really coincide with the current government's future plan for our society. Again, for Hema, what is the future plan for radical feminists?
To get rid of men.
Yeah, exactly. To have a female-only society. Let's say, for example, Fahima became a radical feminist. I don't know, maybe you are, I don't know. But let's say you wanted to be a radical feminist, and Fahima, inspired by radical feminism, went down to see David Cameron and said, "Here, Dave, I want a female-only society. What are you going to do about it?" David Cameron is not going to support Fahima in her wishes. And therefore, they don't see the need for social policy. Social policy will not help radical feminists achieve their goal. Social policy will not help. In its current state, the thing is women have to be political. Women have to take action for themselves. And then you already know, I'll just scroll it down so you can see it better at the back. You already know what type of action radical feminists are suggesting, and that's through people like Adrienne Rich and Laura Purdy. So Adrienne Rich was the first one we did. What did she suggest women should do to start this process off? Ronnie? Political lesbianism. To leave men, and even if you're not attracted to women, to be in a female relationship, so that basically it's making a stand straight away. Political lesbianism. They need to take action. And then it was all that reproductive technology stuff. And if women don't get what they want, they go on baby strike, and therefore maintain their dominance. Now, you could use abortion or contraceptive pills as a way to achieve the baby strike. That could be one connection. I thought a more powerful connection could be Dorbash and Dorbash, to link it all together and bring in another element of radical feminism. Now, if you remember, Dorbash and Dorbash are theorists who talk about domestic abuse. And they said there's two parts of their theory. One was that women don't leave their abusive husbands because they're financial reliance. But what was the second point, or the other point that they raised? Yes, for it.
Was it about like connections to the relationship, like children being connected to the relationship?
That was something else. That was, I think that was smart with the connectedness thesis. There was another part to it though. Did anyone get the other part to it? Yes, Neve?
Domestic abuse had institutional support in the 1970s.
Good. So what they said, because they were right in the 1970s, they said domestic abuse had institutional support for a lot of years. And that's why they hate men so much, because of domestic abuse, and you can make that connection. So domestic abuse had institutional support from governments for a long, long time, all right? We can evidence with that with one of our policies. Which one of our policies illustrates how outrageous it was that something was allowed to happen for so long, and it wasn't until 1991 before it actually became a crime. Marital rape, good, and you can link that into it. So the reason for their extreme action that they want to take, the reason why they want a female-only society, is because the state will always support men and their male dominance. And that can be evidenced by Dorbash and Dorbash's study. And you could then use the marital rape legislation to make it sound even worse. So if you remember, Dorbash and Dorbash was saying it didn't have, it had institutional support until the 1970s. But in actual fact, there's evidence to suggest that domestic abuse still had institutional support up until the 1990s, if it took that long for marital rape to become an illegal act. That'd be a really, really good point to make. We've only got one more left to go, everybody, and then we've just got a few finishing points left. So the last one is Giddings and Beck. We've used up our two negative ones, so therefore it must be positive, which it is. All right, now we just need to talk about what it's all about. Georgia, can you give me just a brief summary, please, of Giddings and Beck?
Can you talk about how divorce is more common? So there's more like your relationships.
Great. Do you remember Beck?
No.
It's all right, don't worry about it. Go on, Nick.
Is it about like the increase of individualism? It's like a risk society. So people are like just not scared to end the relationships. It's like negotiating from them.
That's what we're after. Thank you. Basically, they're both on the same sort of theme. What they're both saying is, in today's society, people have individualism and choice. That's the best way to tie them two together. That everybody now has power, individual power, to negotiate what makes a good relationship to them and their partner. They also have the choice whether they want to stay in those relationships or not. Now, the best one to use would have been divorce, but I have a rule. It's very important that I state this rule. You can only use one policy once. All right? Don't use the same policy continually in an exam or essay. I'll show you an essay question that this will all relate to in a moment. All right? If you've used Divorce Reform Act previously, don't use it again. What you've now got to do is think about another policy that might have given, maybe say like women, some more individualism or choice, or give people generally more choice of what type of relationship they can go into. So look at your list of social policies. It's a bit rough from our recap earlier on. Yes, Paige? I think that'd be a great example, because what you could do is show that because of individualism and choice, people can choose now to be in a homosexual relationship if that's how they feel. And as a consequence, people can now be in a pure relationship. in the past, because of tradition and things like that, that you might have found that people who were homosexual were not allowed to be in a same-sex couple and they couldn't embrace that. Whereas now in today's society they can. So you could use the Marriage Act, because it's more contemporary. Marriage, same-sex couples. Act to illustrate that. Okay? Shows a bit of diversity and variety in your answer. So then everybody, they're the theories. I hope that makes sense. Alright? Now what I'm going to do, just to tie this together, I'm just going to change my structure of my lesson slightly, just to kind of tie all this together. The reason why we've done this is what most essays will look like for social policy. And it'll be about trying to bring the theories into it. It'll either be a who likes social policy, who doesn't, hence the ticks and the crosses, or the question might just focus on one of them, and then you have to apply all the other ones to criticise it or strengthen it to show differences in opinions. So I've got a question for you, and this is actually, that was the rest of the lesson, which we will do, but I just want to show you this instead. What I'd like you to do is underneath that table, just write down this question for me, please, and it'll all make sense as part of it. So just write that question down for me, please. Evaluate the view that the main function of laws and policies on families and households is to reproduce patriarchy. 20 marks. Now these 5 questions are directly linked to your study guide. These are the 5 AS paper questions from your These are the 5 AS paper questions from your social policy study guide that hopefully you now have in your possession. I'm not setting these as formal homework like I am with the theories of the family one, but you could have a crack at these if you want to, and I'm just going to show you how it works. So this is an evaluation question. It's a 20 marker. And it's talking about laws, policies. So you know it's a social policy question. You also see this word here. Remember, what does that word mean in an essay?
Benefits.
It benefits something. So what does it give you an idea of what topic it's always going to be about? So functions, which is a theory. It's always going to be a theory question if you see the word function in it. All right? But it also says law and policies. So what you're seeing is, it's a social policy question about theories, and it's asking you to look at theories, and it's trying to hint one to you. Go on. It's all right, don't worry, keep going.
Radical feminism.
Right, good. And what's your clue?
The patriarchy.
Right. So what it's trying to do is hinting you towards a particular theory to start. And as Neva's rightfully identified, that going back to our table, which you have in front of you, but I'm just getting back to it now, the only one of them that talks about how the state and social policy maintains patriarchy is that one, radical feminism. So what you'd need to do is start with radical feminism and write that paragraph there. The idea is that would give you a really detailed paragraph of stuff to talk about. Then once you've done that, all you need to then do is go through the other ones one by one and link it to what they think about the radical feminist view. So all you'd say is, functionists would disagree with the radical feminist view because instead of disliking social policy, they think it benefits society, not patriarchy. Yeah? Then you'd say liberal feminists would also disagree with radical feminists because they don't think it maintains patriarchy. They think it's a barrier to equality, but we're overcoming it, and explain that.
We have to say every single one of them, or the other 5.
Right, good question. Because it's a 20 marker, I'd say it'd be highly unlikely that you'd get all 6 done.
Yeah.
So I'd pick your favourite ones and go with it. As a minimum, I'd go for 4.
Yeah.
As a minimum. Maximum all 6. Minimum 4. In reality, I know what the pressure's going to be like for you on exam day. At least 4 would get you around 15 out of 20 if you did it well. And that will get you at least 15 out of 20. At least. Alright? The reason why I teach you so much, though, is because next year you'll have to do a 30 mark essay on this sort of stuff. And therefore you'd use all 6. But you have more time, of course. So that gives you that kind of balance. Now, I've still got 10 minutes left of the lesson, but before I move on to the little bonus stuff that I've got for you, is everyone all right with what we've just done? Does that all make sense? Just interact with me, please, very quickly. Yes, everyone's happy. Good. Right then, so forget about that for now. We're now going to move on to the next bit. What I'm going to call the next bit is just a bit of bonus material. We've done the most important part of the topic area. This is bonus material. I might even write that in my notes on here. This is just extra stuff that I'm giving to you that might help you out. I've got 10 minutes left of the lesson. If I don't finish it in this session, I'll do it very quickly at the start of next one. But this is just a bit of bonus material. It's also a good idea, because we're talking about social policies, to understand a lot what happened with the governments behind it. Now, you know your difference between left and right-wing politics and all that sort of stuff. But most of the time, the only information you need to know about governments specifically who passed the policies are post-1997 governments. So you don't need to know about the governments of the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, because that would make this really complicated. To keep it simple, we're just going to focus on the two governments that we've had and have finished their terms since then. So from 1997 to 2010, we had the New Labour government, which we know a lot about. And then from 2010 to 2015, we had the coalition. And I thought I'd just give you a little bit of summary notes about those governments just to try and help you out. Because of all of our hard work and the education module, hopefully you should know a little bit about these already, which will make this quite straightforward. All right? So this would be a really nice little bit of extra information that you could fit in somewhere into your essay if it was relevant. Okay? So we're going to start by looking at New Labour, reintroduce ourselves to an old mate. There he is, it's Tony, he's back. All right? And he was the Prime Minister for 10 of the 13 years in which New Labour were in power. All we're going to do with this, it'll be really quick. You won't need a lot of notes in this. It'll be a couple of lines, that's all. All we need to do is talk about the approach that New Labour had to social policy. So if you remember, these guys were all about state intervention. They believed that the government should get involved in people's lives, and that's what he did. He passed so many policies, and there's a lot of evidence to support that claim. Evidence. Need a P in there, that's why I don't look right. So there's a lot of evidence to support the claim that New Labour were very keen on social policy. I'll just move Tony down here. All right. So all you need to do then is think about all the policies that were passed between 1997 and 2010. So you've got 1998, minimum wage. You've got 2002, the Employment Act. You've got 2004, twice, for the Civil Partnership and Every Child Matters. You've also got smacking laws in there as well. There's clear evidence to suggest that in their years of power between 1997 and 2010, New Labour passed loads of policies to get involved in families and households. All right? This dude here, Lewis, praises New Labour on what they did with the family. This is a nice little quote for you. He praises New Labour for their social investment in children. They focused a lot on trying to improve things for kids in particular. So out of those policies that we've got just up there in the dates, which policies talk specifically about children, everybody?
Every Child Matters.
Good. Every Child Matters, the Children's Act and the smacking laws. But you don't even need to just stay there, you could keep going. Even things like the minimum wage would have helped children, minimum wage. Because if that meant their parents got more money, you could lift children out of poverty if their parents earn more money for the work that they do. If you even go into education, everybody, and talk about things like Sure Start centres, I know that's an education topic, but if you think about it, Sure Start centres providing cheaper nursery care to parents would help them work, and therefore, once again, lift them out of poverty. So there's so many different things that New Labour did to involve themselves in the family, and Lewis praises them for their social investment in children. Nice and easy. All right? That's it. That's all we're going to do on that. So I hope that makes sense. It should have only been a couple of lines in your notes. We'll have time for the next one. I don't know if we'll have time for the last little bit or not. All right? The next stuff is talk about the coalition. So what did they do? And they were in power from 2010 to 2015. If you remember, the coalition wasn't just one party in power. That's what's evidenced by the picture. You got David Cameron, who's the leader of the Conservatives, who are very right-wing as an idea, as a group. And then you've got the Liberal Democrats. they were working together. Liberal Democrats are more centre in the political ideology, so they're a bit of a mixture of both left and right. And what Richard Hayton argues is that there's a lot of conflict in the coalition with regards to the family. So, conflict in the coalition with regards to the family. And as a result, it made their policies quite inconsistent. Inconsistent focus, we'll put. Inconsistent focus. So Richard Hayton says is the coalition had a bit of an inconsistency when it came to family policy and what they were talking about. And he says, the reason why there's conflict in the coalition is that there were two groups within the coalition. This is dead easy. So he says, there was the modernists in the coalition and the traditionalists. The modernists were the people like David Cameron. Although he's a conservative, he'd be classed as a modernist. Because what modernists wanted within the coalition was progression. So can anyone identify a policy that was passed between 2010 and 2015 that's all about progression?
The Marriage Act.
Yes.
Same-sex.
So I'll just put same-sex marriage. David Cameron was a big advocate for that. He's a conservative, but he was all about progression and trying to improve things for the future. That was a clear evidence that part of the coalition was all about progression. Unfortunately, there's a group called the Traditionalists who rejected same-sex marriage. They didn't want it to happen, but it did get through, all right? So, and that was only because of support from other sides, like Labour and things like that. The modernists were not always the most dominant group within the coalition. There are traditionalists who want, as the name suggests, traditional family values. That's what they're all about. Which would mainly be from the conservative point of view, traditional family values, who tried to prevent change and even encourage other change that would be more right-wing. What I would put to evidence that would be the debate about abortion, which went through the last 5 years of the government, and it's still rumbling on today because we've still got a conservative government. So the debate about abortion. Remember, the debate about abortion is about how many weeks you should be allowed to be pregnant for before you have an abortion. What's the current limit? 24 weeks. But the coalition had a debate about reducing that to 20 weeks. So we can write that. It's now 24 weeks. But the traditionalists are not happy with that. They want it to be reduced down to 20. And there's even some people who believe it should be reduced down to 12. All right? That's the debate that's going on. Just a bit of future plan. This has been my last point. In reality, I would argue in the next 10 years or so, that will come back up as a debate, and it'll be something that will be discussed in a lot of detail, and it'll be a very, very emotive and controversial thing to discuss. All right? So I've literally got 1 minute left, and I probably need about 5 to finish off the last bit. So I'll finish that off in the next session. It probably won't be recorded because it's not a major point. So for the purpose of the recording, that would be the end of the topic. Thank you.